Everyone, welcome Pro Football Hall of Famer and HGCC Chair and Co-Founder, joined by the Chief Business Officer of Silicon Slopes, Steve Young and John Bowers.
Wow, this is awesome, isn't it?
I always dreamed of playing for the Jazz when I was younger, and this is as close as I'm going to get on the floor of the Vivint Center, I guess, so Vivint Arena. Everybody.
I'm sure the org would welcome you back anytime. So, how about the governor's message? Builders.
Look, I'm a resident of California. I'm not sure why, but if I could pick a governor, I'd pick him. So
well said.
I really appreciate his spirit and his willingness to stand in the face of, all the things he just talked about. So good for him. I love Spencer.
Yeah. Steve, this is an honor to be here with you today, honestly. And as we've had some good conversations in preparation, I'll tell the audience, you're about to hear some remarkable things from Steve Young and the lessons he's learned. He laughs, he puts it off, he kind of blows it off. But the truth is, Steve's one of the more remarkable people that walks the planet today for his experiences and what he's doing now. And frankly, Utah is a really unique place. You've said this. It's a blessed place. It's a unique place. And it's a place where, kind of tying in with what the governor just said, we can be builders. We've been builders for a long time, and we can continue that tradition. So,
thanks for having me in, and it is an honor to be at Silicon Slopes. I was here a few years ago. I love what's happening. All you have to do is drive down I-15 and see what's happening, and it's powerful, and it's got incredible potential for good and bad, to be honest with you, like anything. And thinking about the challenges that are being faced today are not the same challenges from 30 years ago, but yet the challenges are one that, in my mind, if you think about it in a way that's, I think one of the themes that we're going to talk about, John, is kind of the spirit of abundance and like zero-sum game thinking. So much of why I'm influenced by abundant thinking is because zero-sum game thinking has been such a part of my experience in football and in business and, essentially transactional thinking, like, what do I get? And what do I need to do to get? And then I'll do it. Like, tell me what to do so that I get. And so you get into this transactional space, and every transactional answer, the question that you ask, you get a transactional answer. And until you get out of the space and think about it differently, you're just going to run around in a circle. And I think that's some of the themes that we're going to talk about today, but I'm excited for what the potential is with Silicon Slopes, for what Silicon Slopes can be. And I think that more of a metaphor than necessarily this conference, but just if we think about Utah as a Silicon Slopes a minded place, the potential for me, and that's why I was so excited you asked me to speak, is an amazing opportunity. It reminds me of my Steve Covey story when I was on the plane going back to practice when I was in the depths of depression with trying to replace Joe Montana, and I dug myself such a hole of victimization. I remember I was just, everything was everyone else's fault. It was not fair. Everything I did was not Joe Montana. And I remember the depression I was in. I remember running into Steve Covey and on the plane, and I told him all about this terrible stuff that was going on, and then he quickly asked me, you're a owner, Eddie DeBartolo, and I said, amazing guy. He wants to bring players and players and management together for the first time, create partnerships. Bill Walsh, 3 generations ahead of everybody else in football. Worries about how you holistically about your health, your wellness, mental health. He was talking about things 30 years in advance. Stephen Covey says, I really love those guys. I like to meet them. And then Joe Montana's on the team. I go, yes, he's on the team. That's the problem. He's standing right there, just hovering over me. I can't hardly move. He says, but if you could ask him a question about mentorship, would that work? And I go, yeah, I could ask him. He goes, Steve, I got to be honest with you. I travel the world looking for platforms to show people opportunities to iterate and see how good they can get. And I kind of amplify those platforms. I can't see a better one than the one I'm looking that you have. And so that's the part of the spirit of abundance that he kind of showed me, that is perspective. We can play victimization, we can point out all the mitigating factors in our lives, or we can look over the top of it and find the opportunity. And that's why I'm grateful for the chance to kind of express some of this abundant thinking, if we can get to, if I don't talk too much. And
no, this is perfect. People are here to hear you, not me. Trust me on that one. That is perfectly framed for what we've talked about of what we want to share today, obviously, together. And there is your life. I think most people know of the illustrious career in pro football. Many locally know of the fame at BYU. You're an awesome guy that way. But what I'm really excited about today is what you've shared with me that really is your beaten path as an entrepreneur in your life.
I know you mentioned that, and I thought, I don't know if I've ever been a classic entrepreneur, but if you take back in the arc of it, and I think, you really reminded me, I think that I've been nothing but an entrepreneur in a way, right?
Yeah.
In football.
And share a little bit, what struck me is when we were talking in prep, you said, when I reached a flow state as a football player, it was a space unlike any other. Share some of the story.
Yeah, so,
and then tell the story about New Orleans.
Yeah, so John, quarterbacking is a unique position because you're the person that has the ball in their hand every play. I mean, there's 80 offensive plays in the game, and you're going to have the ball every time, where everyone else is kind of around you trying to help, aid, protect you, whether they're running routes, whether they're carrying whatever. But I have the ball, and I never really thought about it as an entrepreneurial space, but in a way, being a creator of what was just about to happen. So much of that creation is now in your hands. And some of the best moments of my whole football life were moments when I had gotten to a place of expertise in the game so that I came to the line of scrimmage before the play and I could look out at 11 defenders and I could pick them out. I was in such a place of peace about what the play was, what we were going to do, what we were trying to accomplish, that I could just look out and see individuals on the defense. And that takes a long time to get to, by the way, because your mind's usually racing, and defense is a big blob that you kind of keep your eye on, but you don't really get a chance to look at them. And in looking at each person and watching them on film, their behavior became almost robotic, like they did the same thing over and over again if you paid attention. And their mannerisms told you what was coming. And so I could stare at them and I could look, and I remember Darren Woodson, the great safety for the Cowboys. I would stare at him and kind of like, hey, because he's a friend, like, hey, I would want to say, hey, Darren, how are you, And he was always like, don't look at me. Oh, sorry.
Did your mic go down?
Yeah.
Sit forward just a little bit. Right there.
Okay. Hello. I don't know if I can yell loud enough for this one. Yeah?
There we go. Does that work yet?
Hello.
Thanks, Sabina.
Oh, beautiful. And then Darren Woods is my buddy. Thank you for the save. So I'd stare at him. He'd be like, don't look at me. Like, you're staring at me. You make me uncomfortable. And I knew if he was looking at me that he was not going to blitz. But if he was looking away, I know what he's trying to do is don't look at me. Don't look at me because I'm going to blitz. So those kinds of things are empowering. And so I would get to a point where I would drop back to pass and Jerry Rice would be running a route. And I didn't necessarily see him, but I knew where he was. And I knew contextually about the movement of the other 11 guys that Jerry Rice is open. And I started to throw him the ball. And I could throw it to him without actually seeing him. And that was so powerful in my mind. No one knew it. I didn't complete the pass and someone say, oh my gosh, you did that without seeing the receiver. Like, no one cared. They just wanted to complete the pass. But for me, it was that expertise that came. And I remember where you mentioned New Orleans. We were in New Orleans and we were playing in the Superdome, and the Superdome was 85,000 people. And I remember, noon kickoffs in the central time zone in the NFL. So it's noon, and everyone's already like quite liberated, right? Like it's noon, and like people, like, what time do they start in New Orleans?
They enjoy themselves early on.
And also, whenever we played in New Orleans, I got a little box back in Santa Clara, California, delivered to the 49ers. Every year, we played in New Orleans the week before, and open it up, and there would be a voodoo doll in there. And in the voodoo doll, there'd be pins, and you can't imagine how many pins can be put in the left arm of a voodoo doll. And it was the first time I got the voodoo doll, I was like, huh, okay, look what happened. I got a voodoo doll with pins in the left arm. What's gonna happen? And then nothing happened, and I'm like, oh, the voodoo doll's it's okay. So every year in the future, it was no big deal. But the first time, I didn't like the voodoo doll. I didn't like that very much. Yeah. But so you go to New Orleans, you're always going to get in your own little thing. Anyway, to get to the story, because I'm going too long. Towards the end of the game, the play comes, Jerry Rice is open. I know he's there. I let it rip. We're down by 4. And the crowd is so loud, you literally can't hear yourself think, let alone speak. And as I let the ball go, the arc of it, I'm watching it, I get hit, I'm at the bottom of the pile, and I'm sideways, and I see that nothing. I just see a big pile of people, and all of a sudden I hear 85,000 people go silent, like deathly silent. And there's no more, you're talking about power of entrepreneurship. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just did it. I shut them all up and the voodoo doll and just closed the door. We just won that game. And I remember thinking,
that's phenomenal. It's such a good story.
Greatest moment of my career,
Yeah.
But the power that you felt in that creativity. And I think the creativity is what drives, because creation from nothing, clawing it out from some of the great entrepreneurs in the state that I've gotten to know, I honor them because they have clawed it out of nothing, and they've created it. And I felt that, and I know that that's such a place of empowerment, and I love that. And I think I want to encourage everyone, no matter, I'm not necessarily a classic entrepreneur, but I have been able to create, and I think everybody here should be thinking about themselves as creators of new ways of thinking, new ways of doing, new ways of accomplishing things in their life, so they can be the entrepreneurial spirit can be kind of individual.
That's perfectly said. I mean, although I would disagree, I think you are, it may not be the classic entrepreneur, but you're an entrepreneur, right? As the quarterback of that team.
Funds, Sorensen Capital, we started in 2001 and 2 with my partners Rich Lawson and Ron Mika and Fraser Bullock. And then we started what was at the time in 2007 Huntsman Gay Global Capital, which is now HGGC, with Bob Gay and Rich Lawson, myself, and a guy named Greg Benson. So I guess in that way, I've started businesses, and we're a $7 billion private equity fund. So I guess I am classically entrepreneurial.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. And the fact is, I think, as we kind of roll into, from the beginning, this spirit of abundance, which you mentioned, the reality is, when you learn to create something, you identify and you discover yourself. You've said this to me. And in that discovery of self, you begin to realize this power of flow state as you get really good at something. But then where it gains meaning is why you're doing it and for whom. Right, which you said this morning again,
right.
And that's where this becomes remarkably powerful when we really think about it. And so I think you learned that, whether you knew it or not. You learned what it was to be a creator, and you learned to recognize that leadership quality, that desire to go build and help and change, and then. So let's shift just a little bit.
Like most people, John, it becomes it's modeled. I think as a parent, I want my kids to, 2 things I really want them to do. 1, be vulnerable enough to recognize when you make a mistake. own it, and then go fix it. I guess that's 3 things. And so much of it about what I want them to do, I could tell them what to do, and I have 1,000 times. But the real challenge is to model, right? And that's my greatest fear as a parent, is am I modeling the very behaviors that I want them to take with them into the future? And I'm afraid that I haven't. I want to. And it's a real goal of mine. But the modeling that I saw in this spirit of abundance is what informed me on how to think about it, how to do it. And I think the most important one that I saw in football, because people always say, oh yeah, Steve, it's great to think about others, and we'll do that. I give to charity. I'm helpful out in the community. And those are all wonderful things, and I want to encourage those. But there's an intent, and I think this intent is best. I think it's the Bill Walsh story, and I think that.
Yeah.
So my coach in 1987, when I joined it, can't believe it's that long ago, with the 49ers was
You're
Bill Walsh.
not that old, don't worry.
So Bill Walsh already won 2 Super Bowls. Everyone knew that he was a genius in football, the West Coast offense. Everything he did was forward thinking, and he was the first Silicon Valley CEO before Silicon Valley even showed up. And he was frustrated because his minority assistant coaches were not getting opportunities to be head coaches. And in that frustration, he decided that what he was going to do was he was going to create a physical repository of everything that he knew, all the things, that proprietary knowledge that he had that he knew was 3 generations ahead of everybody. And with this proprietary knowledge, I want to be able to package it, not for a museum, not for when I quit coaching, not for later, sometime later, for right now. I want to be filming. And I remember when I joined the 49ers, there was a big guy with a huge camcorder on his shoulder with a long cord, and he would walk around and film Coach Walsh, wherever he went. And whatever he said, and in meetings and practice. And I remember thinking to myself, he must be doing something for a museum. He's world famous. Maybe there's a big documentary they're doing. I had no idea. And as he put his repository together of all his installation, game day installations, playbooks, speeches, philosophy, video-based kind of everything that he did, he packaged it all up in a literal repository that you could put in a box. And then when his assistant coaches got opportunities to go and interview for head coaching jobs, he handed it to them and said, look, this is going to help you, and I will see you in the championship game. Because he knew with this information, you're going to come back and compete against me. Now, I'm not asking you as entrepreneurs with proprietary knowledge to start giving it away to future competitors. But there's a spirit of what he was trying to do. He was empowering those around him with proprietary knowledge for their benefit into the future. And with that example, as I've gotten older, I just can't fathom that Coach Walsh did that. Like, what makes a person at the height of their power? He was as famous, at 1987, he was as famous as he will ever be. And he's a Pro Football Hall of Famer. He's a Pro Football Hall of Famer because of the way that he coached. But in my mind, what he did is so powerful, because now I do Monday Night Football every Monday. We'll be in San Francisco on Monday night when they play the Rams, and I can watch teams warm up and talk to the coaches and see the players. And the spirit of what I've seen over the years is how much this toolkit has traveled through the NFL and has informed offensive philosophy and holistic approach to players, and how coaches talk about the partnership between players and coaches. And it's become kind of the commodity of the NFL. The spirit of Bill Walsh is everywhere. Almost, I'd say 30 of 32 coaches draw their direct lineage back to that toolkit. And that only grows even more. I mean, it just the trees of people from Mike Holmgren and Andy Reid and on. It just goes, now that Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay, their assistant coaches are all going off because they're direct lineage to this toolkit that the spirit, and Bill Walsh unfortunately passed away about 15 years ago. If he was alive today, he would see what abundant thinking can do and the legacy of abundant thinking that gets away from what the transactional parts of, like, I'm super famous, I want to win championships, and so I give and get. And he decided to kind of disrupt that pattern of transactional thinking to a non-transactional space and said, I see you, I see your need, and I want to fulfill some of that and push you forward. And it's as simple as that. And now 15, 20 years later, 30 years later, the NFL's thriving. In my mind, the NFL's thriving today because of the great Bill Walsh.
28 of 32 coaches.
I
Is
think
that right?
30 of 32.
30 or 32. What a remarkable story. And you lived in that.
I watched it.
You learned from him.
I watched it.
And as we were talking, I kind of made the argument that, why would you pick private equity, right? And it's like, but I think that as we talked, it was obvious.
Yeah.
You garnered this creator's spirit. You became one of the best in the world at what you did, and you watched the best in the world at what he did. And then when it was time to transition, which, by the way, is not easy. I have friends that have transitioned from pro sports to then like regular life, and it's just an adjustment, right?
Don't pick a profession, John, that throws you out in your mid-30s. Like that is not cool, by the way.
Then you've got to reinvent. And as you talked to me, it was pretty obvious, like private equity gave you this ability to go see thinkers, creators, builders, and join with them and empower them to go create that same impact in abundance, rather than just changing for money and growth, but to impact communities.
People ask me why. Well, you played all these years, you had a lot of success, just like retire, like quit. My wife asked me, like, why? And I think the why, in answering the why, there's a company, a business that we bought out of Norfolk, Nebraska. It's an insurance-based business. We didn't buy it. We partnered with the owners and the entrepreneurs. That's all we do as partners. So we don't own anything. We kind of find partnerships. And in this partnership, it has grown like beyond your wild. Like you can't imagine how big it is today. It's 100 times bigger than it was 6 years ago. And the leader of that company is a man that I met at that time in Norfolk, Nebraska, who had a spirit of abundance. I don't think he knew it. I articulated it to him. He famously 2 years ago equitized everyone in the business so that now the next iteration, he made, 2,000, 3,000 millionaires in the business because, he shared the equity along all the employee base. And so the business, in my mind, when I think about Brian Adams, I think about my why is to empower you to go do something, because I want the biggest businesses in the world to be run by people who have this spirit, so that the legacy going forward, the abundance that goes forward, gets spread in every direction. Then it's not just a business. It's not just a transactional business with employees and some people making money, everyone making a living and influencing thousands of people, which is wonderful. Having a business is an amazing, powerful thing, but could be even more. If it's thought about in this more, I hate to oversay it, but almost an abundant spirit of thinking about a way to empower others to go on into the future. And with that intent, my why, and I saw Brian the other day at the Monday night game in New York, and I'm like, there's my why. He's thinking, quit saying that, that's so stupid, But I have to have a reason, right, too, because private equity can be extremely transactional. Like that's all it really is. Like, here's some money, and you give me this, and you give me that, and we'll shake hands and move on. But there is a place. And I'm seeking it with my partners and everyone else in our firm to try to think about it in a partnership, pay it forward, abundant spirit. And I'm trying to prove to myself that this ideal works everywhere. I've written a book recently called The Law of Love. It's a spiritually based book, but it really is an embodiment of this spirit. And I always say the law of love is undefeated forever. It will never fail you. It will never let you down. It can carry all the weight of all the ills and all the bad and forever and ever. And I think the spirit of abundance is the kin to that law. And I think that it can feed and house all of us for a long period of time.
That is such a... Man, what a vision. How amazing would it be, honestly, if everyone sitting in this room could live this description? We could change the world.
Listen, we're all traveling. I'm no expert. All I know is that the answers of the most complex things in my life, the greatest challenges, and I'll start tearing up thinking about those challenges, have found resolution through this kind of thinking. It has opened up the gates of heaven for me in ways that I never would have been able to do in a transactional space. And so as we think about, I always talk about merit badge theology, where our relationship with heaven is merit badge thought. Like think about merit badge, there's qualifications, there's things to do, let's go do them, and then I get a merit badge. And if you think about that, your experience with heaven that way, there's a lot of ways to, but it's fundamentally, it's just about what you get. And the sacrifice, and I'm giving every bit of sacrifice that we do for our family, for everywhere else out in the world, it's a sacred sacrifice. But if it's done for credit, then by definition it's self-interested. In the end, self-interest rots over a period of time. And so the only way to get to this place is to start to see other people as the reason, as the why, and not what all the stuff I have is the why. We will end up with, it could be a good life, it could be a wonderful life in many ways, but it won't be an abundant life until we see out and create and find ways to empower selflessly those around us, because then you see them. I put quotations, I hate air quotes, but you see people, and that creates a perpetual nature rather than a transactional.
So as we're sitting in here and describing this, for those that want to apply this reality of abundance and seeing others, a couple things. How can we do that?
I always think about, because it's funny, whenever I've talked about the law of love, or I could say the law of abundance, people immediately ask me, what do I do? Because we're a can-do, Utahns, we are a can-do people. And give me a list, it's gonna get done. And that's one of our best qualities. It's phenomenal quality. And what I'm describing is not a list of things to do, because by definition, you're looking for, I'm gonna do them and then I'm gonna get a reward of some kind, or some kind of benefit, or some kind of a good feeling. What I'm trying to do is, I'm asking us to leave that paradigm. And it's funny, people have asked me, what do I start doing? And I say, well, there's nothing to do, there's just things to be. There's qualities to engage in how you approach all the things that you do. We live in a transactional world. We cannot leave it. Enoch and his people are the only ones that were able to leave it, right? But we're not leaving it, we're here. And so we're gonna live in this transaction. We have to be athletic. I'm not trying to make you, do something. We're gonna live in transaction. We're gonna get jobs, we're gonna get paid. There's a lot of transactions we go through in life. Not gonna change. But what are we trying to be? And what is our intent? I always talk about when two ships leave the port, which direction do you sail in every day? I sail in the direction of the healing of the people that I have relationships every day. And the relationships that I'm talking about are relationships driving to work. Someone's at the light. They're looking at their phone. The light turns green. They just sit there, right? You have a relationship with that person now. What's the healing spirit of that relationship in that moment? I don't know. It's a tough one, right? Because you just wait it out. Is that the healing spirit? Because in the end, does it really matter? Or is it the loud honk and a finger? Like, what is it? If we thought about every relationship as minimal as that one, to the one that's laying in our bed next to us as a spouse or a family member, or the intimate relationships, every day, where do I sail? I sail in the place of healing those relationships. And when I say healing, I don't say necessarily healing a wound, plenty of that, but the healing in the way that you describe and talk to people. I always say when you see someone at work, and Bill Walsh I go back to Bill Walsh when he made this first speech in front of us in 1987. He says, I'm going to integrate this team. And we thought racially integrate, because that's what integration meant to us back then. And he says, it's way more than that. I want you to develop an element of love for each other. And we all chuckled, like, love and football, ha, 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 like little kids that we were, right? What he wanted is for us to see each other and to see these relationships. He said, because if I leave you guys alone, you'll play for 10 years with some of these folks in this room. And you'll know their name because it's on their back of their jersey. But you won't know anything else about them, because you have no cultural way of breaking down the things that keep us apart, the comfort things that we do. Look at this room. He pointed, he says, look at the quarterbacks. All of you guys are sitting together. Of course we are, because we know each other, and we're smarter, so we sit together. But he's making the point that we live our lives in a cultural place where all we do is kind of create a space of transaction where we're healthy, we're good. You're in my group and we're good. So we'll just keep transacting together. What about the people that aren't of our group? I'm nervous, okay. And he would force you in the lunchroom, he'd push you around. You go sit with someone you don't know. It's awkward. And then you get to know them. And his idea was, at the end of the day, when we're in Green Bay, at Lambeau Field, down by 4, in the freezing rain, in the coldest you've ever been, and 80,000 people screaming at you in Lambeau Field, you'll look in the huddle, you'll see each other, and that element of love that you share will actually help you go do your job. And so I think that the idea is, how do I leave my metaphors work for me, but they might not work for you, but how do I leave you asked me what to do.
Yeah.
Leave the port every day in the direction of healing in every interaction, in every relationship you have, with, I hate to say it, with long-suffering, gentle persuasion, and love. And just lay it on top of every problem you have, and let's just see what happens. Again, I'm only telling you this because I'm living it out, and it's making the difference for me. So I'm expressing shared common experiences with you. I am no expert. I'm just traveling along with you, and I've found something that I know is my way forward spiritually. It's my way forward in business. It's my way forward at home. It's my way forward in my marriage. And I can't tell you the ironic benefit is in this endeavoring of the healing of others is the irony of back you receive, not intentionally, this incredible fullness. And I don't know how to describe it any other way. And so when I think about Silicon Slopes, John, when I asked you to help me get this out, and I'm so grateful to you because you're thinking and how you and I had these conversations in preparation, and you don't even realize sitting there how much of a inspiration you were for me. When I thought about being invited to Silicon Slopes, how do I describe this for business-oriented places and people? And then I thought to myself, it's everywhere. This is not to be left behind because all of a sudden there's a business relationship. This is the exact place for it. And this is the exact empowerment. If every business in Silicon Slopes influence could create a space of intent like this, you could change the world. And so it's like, I don't want to be this crazy guy that's like, oh, you know, all this high-flying stuff. This is on the ground, in the dirt. Grab the dirt, look at it, and go abundance. Like it's in the dirt. It's not ethereal. It's not something, some great idea. It's something to just turn to the person next to you right now. What's the relationship? How can I be more healing in that relationship at this moment and on into the future? And then build businesses that are built on those fundamentals. And we do that, then I feel like I want to speak with you because I think there's a possibility that Silicon Slopes could be, people are just like, what's going on in Utah? This is crazy. The full empowerment of what any company that you're a part of, the full empowerment of what it can be, like Bill Walsh, into the future in 30 years, is exponential with these kinds of ideals. And I just, I gotta cut talking. I'm sorry, I get a little excited.
No. We are very fortunate to have Steve not just be here today, be part of our culture, part of our journey in Utah, part of our family. And we're out of time today, but we need to do this again, my man.
Well, I am I mean, you know, my gosh, my roots are deep here. My boys down south at school, my family, their roots are deep. I might be a resident of California, but I'm a citizen of Utah. Like I bleed this color of this state, and I really do find great solace when I'm here, peace, and I love being a part of Utah. And if people said, "Where are you from?" I'm from Utah, right? That's where I'm from, and I love being here.
Thank you so much, Steve. Let's take it together and go forward and build in a spirit of abundance. And join me in thanking Steve one more time for being with us today.